Rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll call the work session to order. We have the agenda in front of us, so go ahead.
All right, we could start with the one that's actually on the agenda, the snow plowing policy, snow and ice control policy. Just looking to update the one that we currently have that was last updated in 1997. Getting a little bit more clarity in the language, getting some updated items in terms of, taking out the times, making it a little more, I don't want to say vague to the public, but making it more so we can control on our end the operations and not have people questioning then, why didn't you start at, 9 o'clock like the policy says, or the policy says that you're gonna do this in this order, and kind of gives us something back to lean on. I know I had comments from Steve about the primary, secondary. I had it in major, collector, minor, then I changed that to just primary, secondary, maybe to make it a little more easier for people to understand. So, yeah, just looking for comments and input on this. And also, I'd like to, this was one of my goals Jeff asked last year, to go through the policies, and I'm just getting to it now. But to make them look more standard too. I'm maybe a little OCD, but each policy is different font and different sizes and different headers and everything. So at least our policies make them look, more professional. And
I'm confused. Why?
that's the calcium control one. The snow and ice was in the agenda packet.
Yeah, but why do we have two of them for the calcium?
There's
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. I was reading
No,
this.
that's
'cause
all right.
I had read that
So the
yesterday.
calcium one was the one that's not on a header was one that we drafted internally, and then I took that one and added
Oh, okay.
Better language, I guess you'd say,
Okay.
with a little bit of help from AI.
When I read the snowplow one,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, do you replace a lot of mailboxes?
We do, if we hit them, if our equipment hits them. I think what's kind of a misconception is that snow does take out a mailbox, and our drivers, they don't know, they can't hear it when they're driving down the road, their underbody's scraping on the road, it's loud. So they're unaware, if the snow does strike a mailbox. But Eric, every call we got, he did go out and take a look at, and I'd say 99% of the time he could tell if it was our equipment or if it was a snow strike, or I think we had two that snowmobilers hit them and took out the posts. So
And sometimes it's an errant vehicle going off the roadway that takes it out, and then we
Right.
get blamed for it.
exactly, and snow that has a lot of force, especially that last one with the heavy wet snow. It could probably kill a person if you were hit with that force of snow on the side of the road. So it can take out a mailbox. It's very easy to.
Spreads mail real good.
Yeah.
I know, yeah, we had that
Yeah.
happen, yeah.
There's a lot of substandard supports out there too.
Right.
We'd like to encourage people to use the swing away mailboxes if at all possible. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
So-
and that's kind of standard policy that I saw in every county. They only replace if they're hit by the equipment, not the snow. They'd be out replacing mailboxes every day if that were the case.
So when we moved, our mailbox is now on County Road 40.
Okay.
I actually went into the post office because it's not safe where the mailboxes are. I mean, you come over a hill and there they are. Plus, we've had our mailboxes hit and the mail scattered, and I get how that happens. Well, I was told by the post office we'd have to wait 2 years because they'd already bid the route. And then to move the mailboxes was gonna cost approximately $5,000 because the post office wouldn't allow us to use our regular mailboxes anymore. We would have to use that kiosk,
Oh, really?
or that, yeah, where everybody has a lock and you're all on the same.
I've seen some of them, like your example, where they have pulled them onto the road that you live on, and they're off, so the mail person pulls in, and there's a big
It'd be much safer, and it would be way better for the county plowing roads.
Yeah, we just did that on, there's that trailer park on the west side of the road, just
Oh,
north of
yeah, there
34.
is.
And she pulled all the mailboxes off of that trailer park and moved them into her actual access into the road, so we're removing all of
Oh,
those.
Well, I'll stop
Yeah,
at the
I don't
post
know
office again
the-
and see
the
if we can do
post
something
office.
different. Cause there is a place we could move them to, and then
Yeah.
the person
Safer for the
delivering
mail.
mail could just turn.
Right.
Yeah.
I wish they all, the
Safer for
groupings,
them,
I
too.
wish they
It'd be
all were
much
off
safer.
the highways. It
Yeah.
is.
Same thing on 118, there used to be, coming off of 71, going up the hill, there used to be a row of mailboxes for the development on Roxy Drive
Okay,
to the north, and now those are all gone,
okay.
and they're obviously must be at their homes.
It's even unsafe getting the mail.
And I've seen people coming from Roxy Drive take out the mailboxes, because it's icy and, and they're there.
Yeah, even mine I live on Innsbrook Drive just north here, and those are on Innsbrook, they're not on Highway 71, so they did pull them off of the highway onto the
I'll let you
local
find
road.
out, 'cause
I will.
I could move, both sides of Estate Drive could move one on one side and one on the other side. 34's kinda nasty.
Yeah, I don't, again, I don't know the mail policy, but to me, it'd be more safe for their drivers even to be pulling
Absolutely.
off of the highway and getting the mail, and, you know, might take an extra, 2 minutes, say, to
Yeah.
back in and pull out and whatnot, but I'm not sure how they operate there.
I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. I'd be curious to know.
I have one question. I'll probably be asked by a constituent, but how would I define appreciable accumulation to them?
We, in Kitson County, it was 3 inches. That's just across the board what we accumulated, and then that would trigger us to go out. Here, it's a little different because there's higher traffic volumes. So Eric has been looking at, say 1.5 inches, and it depends on the snow type too. But say 1.5 inches, like on Cassaw 4, the highest traveled road in the county, is kind of when he makes the call to go out there. But otherwise, it's been around that 3 inches that then he's like, okay, we're going. And sometimes that case has happened where it's like 9 o'clock at night that it's accumulated to the 3 inches. Well, we're not going to send out a shift at 9 o'clock at night just to call them back at 5 o'clock in the morning. So they'll start the next morning at 3 o'clock in the morning. We had that probably 4 times this winter where they started at 4 on Sunday morning, 3 on Sunday mornings to go clear those late snow plows. It kind of tags along the line of like, you don't want to be out there when it's snowing because one, it's not unsafe for the operators, it's hard to see, but two, you're just accumulating and you're just pretty much wasting resources to go around and clear the snow out. You're gonna have to make 3 passes on your route where you could have made just 1 if you would have let it accumulate to that amount.
That's one of the places where if you look at the old policy that says 1 inch, 4 inch, well, you could have 2 inches downtown and 1/2 inch 2 miles away from here. So
And that's kind of one where I wanted to make it more vague
there needs to be more judgment in that than just this, because an inch is a different thing to everybody too when they're looking at snowfall. So it makes sense to use a generalized term for a policy like this for all the reasons that Andrea is saying. They have to have some discretion on the use of resources, because if you send them out and it keeps snowing and you send them out and you send them out again, then you've used 3 times the resources to deal with maybe two inches of total accumulation. And nobody would be in favor of that, but at the point in time when it's snowing, everybody is. So it's a tough call, but that's exactly what she was saying when she started by saying we made some things a little more vague. What she said is we want there to be more administrative judgment relative to the use of the policy. Because when you put 1 inch or you put bare road or you put something like that, then anybody finds anything and they say, well, that's not, you gotta come back. And that's not practical.
Yeah, Eric lives up by LaPorte, so he can see the accumulation up north, but then he's had Chris, who lives down here, kind of call in of how much is down here, because it varies drastically between the north half of the county and the south half.
Well, that might be an interesting thing to discuss, is who is watching the snowfall and the accumulation and making the call relative to sending out the crews.
Yeah, Eric's made the call this winter with the help of Chris, who is the foreman, maintenance foreman. He's called Chris to, how much accumulation do you have at your place, or can you go on drive a couple roads and see what the conditions are. Also, the cameras on the shop that we have, we're able to log in virtually, and we can see, at the field facility, really good picture of how much accumulation is actually at our office there, and that's kind of a good place to make the call because it's in the city and you can see the snow there too. So
I would imagine late spring too, everything changes, because you could have 5 inches of heavy wet snow, and if you go out and plow it, you're gonna tear up your gravel roads.
yep, and that happened this year with that late snow. We had to chain our side wings up, and then we lifted our underbodies about 1.5 inches, 2 inches up off the ground because you scrape into that wet and you're losing your gravel on the surface of your road, and then people complain about gravel in the ditches, so it's just it's kind of a circle
Yeah.
of life, I guess.
And sometimes it's gone within,
Yep, and sometimes,
6 hours
yeah,
anyway.
it melts right away. So it's kind of, is it worth it to, every snow event, I'd imagine on overtime, we're spending lots of money, is it worth it to do that, or is it worth it to, do a light clearing and then have it melt off and then the next day? Which was happening this spring with those late events. They were melting within 24 hours off the roads. When that pavement gets hot, it's quick to see how quick it melts off.
Yeah, I had a couple of people this spring, or late winter, contact me in the morning, and by the time I had a chance to go out there, which was lunch hour, the roads were plowed and the surface was wet, but there wasn't snow. I mean, it was that quick.
Yeah, it's my opinion that people have gotten really used to like how MnDOT operates their snow plows. They're out there 2 shifts. They put
dust on
they
the
put
road.
brine, they put salt down, and we've forgotten a little bit how to drive in winter conditions. And
see them plowing pavement sometimes.
yeah, it's I think part of this, people need to realize they live in northern Minnesota and it snows and it's icy, and you might have to leave 15 minutes earlier to get to your location and drive slower.
I know it can be scary too, driving with that wet snow,
That slush really grabs your wheels and pulls you.
your hydroplane on top of it.
Yep.
Okay, any more comments about the policy?
I think it looks good.
Just one thing, I was wondering if you're gonna intend on increasing the use of brine instead of,
We've talked about it. We have a few trucks that are, and we do use it. We get it from MnDOT. We just pay for it off of their shop. We've looked into the possibility of putting a tank at our north shop, a brine system. They're very expensive. It's about $35,000 to $40,000 to get it. And also, we've been offered by MnDOT to get a used one, but talking to Cass County, you might know that they got one and then they had to put in quite a bit of money because it was leaking and cracked. So we've been looking into it a lot. It's just, it's kind of the upfront cost, I guess, of getting the system operational. Plus, we have gravel road, a lot of them up at the north shop, so it's not as beneficial.
I know, Cass, they got some funding through the, I lost it.
Soil and water has some
Soil and water,
funding.
yeah, SWCD.
Yep, and they have some
programs
funding
for things
that
like
could
that.
assist with that. It's just kind of the operations of it and where and when.
And you have to have the facility to store everything.
Soil and water,
Yeah.
because it protects the
Yeah,
lakes
that's
and
what I was
waters
wondering,
is
yeah.
really why they use it.
Okay.
Is kind of as vague as you can get it to use the money, I guess,
Yeah.
is how I put it. But,
Okay,
all right. And this, I'll send it out. I plan on sending letters. We're gonna change up our, how the townships purchase the sand salt from us for next year. So I'll send the new policy with the letter in terms of the sand salt purchasing.
So are the townships purchasing about the same amount? Is it increasing or decreasing or?
It's about, I think it's been pretty consistent. I think what we're looking at doing is right now their contractors come and they pick it up.
Uh-huh.
And that requires us to have a loader on site, somebody operate the loader, and we're busy when a snow event comes, so it's tough on our staff to be able to load these guys. Plus we're not sure, we buy it at state contract price with no tax, and we're not sure where it's actually getting spent when a contractor picks it up. So we're looking at having the townships talk to their contractors, how much average sand salt do you use? Let us know, and then their contractors will have to pick up that much and store it at their own location. And then, if they run out, the township would again, hey, can we get another, 5 ton or something like that, versus us constantly loading and getting their contractors in. So,
Okay, we can move on to the next item.
I don't know. Give you guys a chance to read it if you haven't.
Yeah. Have we taken a position at all on roads that, skirt a lake or river, on whether we apply this or not, or just?
We haven't. And this is, like Shar asked, this is probably the most calls I get in the summer is people for it and people against it. And right now, I can't say, well, according to the policy, this is why we are doing it or why we aren't doing it right now. It's just kind of my judgment if we are or not. And yeah, we've switched to the DuraBlend, which is quite a bit better in terms of going into lakes and whatnot on those areas that are close to the lakes. And then eventually, like CASA 23, we're going to be paving in a couple of years, so that'll kind of reduce that.
So for this, are the townships purchasing about the same amount, or?
Yeah, and they've actually, with anything, they've actually they've kept the same miles, and that increases the price every year because the price goes up. So they're having to reduce their miles to stay at the same budget line, which is the county also. The price keeps going up, and, we're spending $1 million a year on an annual product with no justification of why we're spending it or where we're actually spending it.
Do you know the cost this year for a mile?
This year, it was $1 per gallon. It was $1, gosh, I want to say $1.53. I'd have to double check, and then I'd have to figure out what gallons per mile and calculate it out. I did ask Aaron in our office, is the one that puts this project together, and I could get that number from him.
Okay. I get asked every once. I remember back when I was a supervisor, and it was $600 a mile.
Okay.
And I think it was
It's
like
well above that now.
Yeah, let me.
Well above that number.
$3,000 or something now.
I did ask him. Let me see if I can find it again.
I want to say it's 33
3,300 for a mile?
for DuraBlend, I believe.
Wow.
It's right around there, I think. Regular chloride is significantly less. I think it's 50 cents a gallon less for standard chloride.
Okay.
And I have the same thing that Andrea says. I've got people that'll call and complain that it's not done, and people that'll call and complain that it got done.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aaron said it's $4,196 for calcium chloride and
Oh, wow.
$4,751 for DuraBlend per mile at the application rate that they recommend.
And when your fillings get rattled out, you want it.
And it has its benefits. We use it on roads that are hard to get to for maintenance purposes. It locks in the road a little better. But to use our state aid money, and this is the same with the state, you can't use it for dust control. You can't, it's not a maintenance for dust. They don't allow that. You can call it road stabilization is why it's kind of have that name on it.
Which is surprising to me because silica dust is one of the hot topics for OSHA
Yeah.
and MPCA they're
It's kind of
targeting,
a-
so
It's
I
a
mean,
unique, I know, when I worked for MnDOT, we would have to always call it, we're stabilizing the aggregates, or we're, you know, it's kind of a strange comment, I guess you'd have to make on it. Yeah, having, I guess, my thoughts is having a policy in place kind of helps me justify what we're doing and why we're doing it. When I get the calls, you know, from people specifically who don't live here and, you know, have a house on a gravel road and, you know, I want mine chlorided, and, well, you know, you get 20 cars a day on your road, it's not worth spending $4,000 a mile on that, and I'm sorry.
Where I lived before, we did it for a few years and then noticed some of our trees were dying, whether it was from that or not. That's not why I'm saying this. 'cause
And
I
it's a
don't
salt
know.
product, so it is
Yeah.
possible.
But in our township, we had to pay
Okay.
in
And
front of our house.
a lot of counties in our district, Polk County, Marshall, I think Pennington now does it. They actually have it in an application system where homeowners, if they want it done, they apply, they pay for it themselves, and then the county goes out and does it as their project, along with some roads, you know, they do by themselves. But it's the people who live on the road then, if they want it, they pay for it, which is good and bad because it's a lot of work on our end to go out and measure it and quantify it and deal with the applications and make sure people actually pay, and so that's a lot of work.
Well, then if you have a dry segment of road and then you have chloride and then a dry segment.
Right, the
and
blading
more
kind of
chloride,
gets,
it all gets intermingled together anyway in the end, so you're
Right.
diminishing the usefulness of the product.
right, which that's where I don't want to go to that route. That'd be too much work, I think, for us.
Just one comment about the policy, the one with the letterhead on top,
Mm-hmm.
is there is the wording of dust control in there. I think we should
Okay.
change that.
Yep,
Because
I
it's
can-
not intended as a dust control.
Right,
It's just
right.
a benefit of it, so.
And I don't know if you guys, if you want to even take that out of
Where's that at?
the header.
It's
Oh, right
here,
up in
it's
the
here,
beginning,
and then
okay.
it's down here again.
Yep,
So
so I can even
if
remove
we can
that
just
out of the.
reword that, because we're not trying to prevent dust, it's the other end of it that we're trying to
Right.
accomplish,
Yep,
so,
yep, I can do that.
all right.
I would also probably, the last sentence under the justification, where it says important to note that dust control measures, I would delete all the stuff in the middle.
Oh, for the convenience of property
Yes,
owners?
I would just delete that out because that's not, this is related, this is a road maintenance
Yep.
policy, right? So, dust control is not a sufficient reason.
Oh, the last sentence there.
The last
Okay.
sentence
I
should be,
define what you're
should be,
talking about.
should, that middle part should be taken out. And it
Okay.
really, you know, the bit about where we're talking, where the justification, decrease routine maintenance, significantly minimize the loss of binder material. And dust, that's the only place where dust should show up in this policy.
Okay,
When we're explaining that that's what we mean by binder material.
so maybe keep that first sentence, but delete the last one.
I would delete in the first sentence, the dust control,
Oh, yep, I see right there, dust control products.
warrant the application of products to enhance road serviceability,
Okay.
blah, blah, blah.
Got it.
And I know when I worked in Monoman County, they had, primarily because it's largely agricultural, and a lot of the farmers and ag businesses would, every year they would put out a letter and say, you know, if you want it, you can buy it, right? If you want to do the mile in front of your house, you can do the mile in front of your house, and they contracted out for all that service, so when they got a price from the applicator, they were paid in advance, and then it was done when the applicator came through the county. So it was a really easy way to do that. And there were people who were willing to pay that, you know, to have the roads that go past their operations treated for dust control, not for stabilization, for the purpose of minimizing dust. So there are probably fewer of those situations here. And you would probably, if you were talking about cost effectiveness of application, people would probably have to buy a mile at a time rather than just do the 100 yards in front of my driveway, right? That wouldn't be cost effective to do that way. So if there were ever a conversation about having an elective policy, I think that John's got a pretty good one up on Monoman, and I know you know him,
Yeah,
so.
I can check. Yeah, I don't know, it's like the miracle chemical, people love it, but it's getting expensive and it's,
There are other products out there, but they just don't last.
Yeah,
The performance of them isn't desirable for the money you spend.
I think Becker uses the magnesium, and then they've even tried testing like beet
Yep,
beet
beet
juice,
juice.
but people don't like it because it's red and it looks like there's accident on the road.
Paper pulp
The
water
paper
was
pulp,
another
yep.
product, yeah. Soap, there's a soap solution type product that's also used. It just doesn't have the longevity. It doesn't stay as long as a chloride type product.
And you can also buy this dry. They sell it in bags as flakes, and people can have that, and they lay the flakes out on the road, and then when it rains, it activates it onto the road. We sold it in Kitson County, and that was the only chloride we did. We would sell the flakes to people if they wanted it, but I don't really want to get into that process of selling that. But just so people know, that's out there and they can buy it that way too versus the wet application.
So it looks like in here too, everywhere you have the words dust control, you can just substitute aggregate
Yeah.
stabilization and it probably read fine.
Yep, I will go through and change those words out.
And again, the intent of both of these policies is to manage the resources and the cost of maintaining the roads in a way that's administratively have the authority to be able to do that in best judgment. And ultimately, if we and I would suggest, that's why we're doing this now. I would suggest that we would share these policies with the townships along with the letters about the other control and how we coordinate with them. And then bring them back sometime later, this summer. Having a conversation about snow removal in the dead middle of winter is a bad idea.
Right.
And these two policies were discussed at the Public Safety and Transportation meeting a month or two ago. So going through the process of having you review these, think about the types of comments that you get from constituents. We'll send these out when we send out the letters to the township, so they have an opportunity to take up, because we're partners with them in how we manage the roads in the county. And then bring it back, and if we get evidence or we get overwhelming opinion, we can change policies, right? So I think we're introducing these now, having a good conversation, and then we'll bring them back after they've been, after we've had an opportunity to share them with the townships and get their feedback on them too. But townships are responsible for their roads, but a lot of what they do correlates to what we do.
Andrea, the Hubbard County Township Association is on the 19th. Would you be able to make that? That might be a good time to share these.
Yeah, or let me check, May 19th?
Yeah, it's at Bedore Town.
Are you gonna
Bedore
have the
Town
other stuff ready for them? You wouldn't have that ready for them by Monday.
The sand salt stuff?
Yeah.
I could probably get it put together,
Oh, so there's more that you want to add on, so maybe you want to
and
come
that
a
won't be,
different month then.
that won't be like a policy, I wouldn't think, of the changes, it'll
that's-
just be information more so.
That's the information, but
Yeah.
it may be, I mean, if you can make Monday, but you would want to get the information out to the townships beforehand, because they're not all gonna be at the meeting.
Right,
So I was kind of thinking that that might work better for the July meeting.
yeah, either one, whichever, either June or July. or
Where's the one out
later.
in July? Might be closer to wait till July. Let's see.
That I don't remember. It might actually, maybe here, might be Henry, or is it Henrietta?
I don't have it written down.
I don't either in my calendar.
Henrietta,
Henrietta.
Oh, yeah, that'd be close.
So that's here, right? Or, do they have a town hall?
They do have a town hall, yep.
Yep.
You know the date of that one, the July?
It'd be the third Monday.
21st?
Third Monday?
21st, yep.
Or is it the fourth Monday? It's the third Monday this month because of Memorial Day.
Yeah. I for sure could have the July one, everything ready.
Your conversation about communicating to the townships was about the salt sand
Yep.
issue.
Yep.
And then I would say, and along with that, the county is discussing and planning on updating these two policies. And we'll be there at the next Township Association meeting to discuss if you have questions.
Is there, I forget, is there a person that like manages, that could like push out these policies to the townships, or would I just email them, or
Eora, would she do that?
Theora would do it?
Yeah,
Okay.
do you have her email?
I do, I think she's emailed me before.
Okay.
Should get it to all the clerks.
Shelley Nelson, I believe, is the Hubbard County Township Association clerk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and there's some townships that never come, so.
Okay.
But they would,
But I-
but
so-
they would get
no,
all the,
but I'm
they
just
would
saying
get the
that'd be good to
materials.
give it
Yep.
directly
Right.
to the townships.
Right. Yeah, I think it's, you know, to the comments of this one specifically of the aggregate stabilization too, and eliminating the dust. That's some calls I got last year were from people on the other side who are, you know, why are we paying for people who live on a gravel road that they know is dusty, that now we're spending all this money that on the dust. And so it's kind of a, you get all sorts of calls. You guys know it's very broad of what people think of this.
And their money also goes toward paving a road
Well,
that they
right,
don't live on.
exactly.
The arguments could go
It's-
on and on.
I know, and it's, my favorite are the, I know a senator calls and it's like, cool, good for you.
Okay. Any other conversation about it?
Just a quick one on road counts. So how often do you do that?
Vehicle counts,
Yeah.
MnDOT does them for us, and they have a cycle. Roads, I believe it's every 4 years by statute, they're supposed to do this cycle. MnDOT's very far behind in their traffic office on a lot of things. So they're very behind on our road counts. We've been talking internally in our district about purchasing some of the counters. We had some old ones, but the technology doesn't work anymore with updates and whatnot. So we're talking about purchasing some in the district, and then each county can kind of rent them out and do the counts themselves.
I think about 118, the one I live on.
Okay.
You've got the north end, which comes off of County Road 9, and basically it's a lot of traffic going to Evergreen Lake. And then you've got the east side, where you go up the hill, and then there's a development to the north, but then after that, there's probably just as many homes there as on the rest of 118. So if they put the vehicle counters on the different spots, they're gonna get
Drastically different numbers.
numbers that maybe don't represent the
And that's-
majority of the road.
That's a lot of the roads. I just had a conversation about 32 is similar to that. In the first mile and a half, it's densely, populated. There's a lot of houses and a lot of vehicle traffic, but after that, it's farm. It's farm fields and maybe 2 houses, the rest, the 6 miles, and they're wanting to know when we're gonna pave it, and it's hard to justify paving it when, you don't have a solid vehicle count, and it doesn't connect into another road. Becker County is gravel. It's not a connector road. It's not a high-trafficked, high-volume road. So
Thank you.
I would love to. I'd love to pave and minimize, but it's expensive, very expensive.
Okay, anything else?
All right.
So you can go, that's fine. Jeff, I thought we had, under auditor treasurer, it was, had the township information, and then when the township association meetings were, but I can't find it under auditor. Is it under somewhere else?
I will look and see if we have the
It
schedule.
used to be under auditor, but, okay.
Are you looking for the PDF file or whatever?
Yeah, who the township officers are, and then the
It-
dates of the,
Yeah, it's actually if you go under your government,
Government, yeah.
yeah. Oh, it's under government, not, okay.
if you just, on the top, if you click on your government
Yeah.
instead of the drop-down.
Yeah.
And we should add it to the drop-down list. But if you click on your government, you'll see and learn more about township, city, and officials on the left-hand side. It's still there, but we should probably
Okay.
make that link. And the good news is the list does say as of April 2nd, 2025, so, because we get that updated periodically.
Okay. We move on to expansion and remodel project update.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Austin Mee with ICS. I'm the project manager on the job. So today, or this morning, is just a general board update, construction update. We'll go through the schedule at a high level, and then we'll kind of talk about what's upcoming with the project. So to begin, a construction update. So we've started construction at the Level 2 Government Center. Demolition has been completed. Interior framing was completed, as well as electrical rough-ins, drywall installation, and painting. And acoustical ceiling tile grid installation has been underway as well. And we've actually began the pad out process as well. So we're starting to get into the finishes on the second level. And I got some pictures attached to the presentation as well, just to kind of show you that space. So right here is, as you come up to the level 2, that's the commons area in front of the service counter, just showing new drywall, new painting. And the next picture is showing some additional painting and into some office spaces. And then the next picture, you'll see some of the new acoustical ceiling tile grid being installed. And then the last couple pictures just showing the mechanical, electrical, plumbing grid work installation underway.
The pictures were nice. Thank you
Yeah,
for doing that.
absolutely. Yep.
And if you, Denise has been posting those from the main county website. There's pictures as we go along, so.
Yeah, so every week I'll be sending out a weekly update and they'll be posted to their website for public information. So what's upcoming? So we'll be continuing our bi-weekly project oversight committee meetings. We'll continue construction at the government center, start finishing up the level 2, and then jump down to level 1. We'll commence construction at the additions, and we do have a groundbreaking ceremony this morning at 10:30 a.m. So I do invite all of you to attend to officially celebrate and kick off this project. So in the next couple weeks, we'll start to see a lot of action, a lot of moving parts. Next, we'll jump down to the schedule. Again, it's a high-level schedule of kind of the overall project and how we have it phased. So currently, the renovation level 2 commenced in March and is scheduled to be wrapped up in June of 25. Level 1 renovations commencing in June of 25 and wrapping up in September. The lobby, records, and sheriff's renovations commencing in January of 26 and wrapping up in April of 2026. And the housing units and the booking on the west side of the jail commencing June of 25 and wrapping up in September of 26 for the renovations. And then for new construction, the garage and Sally Port that's being built on the west side will be commencing here in the next week or so, wrapping up June of 2026. And the new construction at the lobby, records, and sheriff's offices on the east side commencing at the same time and being wrapped up in January of 26. With that, I will open it up to any questions.
Where's the groundbreaking ceremony?
It's just right here on the west side in front of the existing Sally Port.
And everything's going smoothly? You haven't had any major hiccups or anything?
Yeah. I mean, it's construction, per the schedule and per the construction schedule, we are where we need to be. Of course, there's hurdles, but nothing that we can't overcome. So overall, it's been a pretty okay start. Yeah.
The two questions I would think you'd be interested in, are we on time and are we on budget? And to this answer, generally, yes.
Yep.
We've had a few adjustments to make, but nothing significant. We've had a few timing issues, and we'll be talking about those tomorrow morning, and then at our planning meeting on Thursday. One of the timing issues is that the furniture for the second floor isn't going to be here as early as we thought, which means the transition from second floor to first floor construction here will be a little bit different, but still generally within the parameters that you're looking at this point.
Yep.
And all of the contractors, subcontractors are doing everything on time to the specs that you desire?
Yeah, so far so good. We've only had, with the government center, the bulk of the work is at the additions and at the jail. But with the contractors that we've had on site, they've been doing a pretty good job.
Okay.
Yep.
It's gonna get busy and more complicated when we start digging,
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
which is
Yeah.
next week. So,
Yep.
but yeah, we will. I do not have an agenda for general government meeting today. If anybody has any questions, we could generally bring those up at the end of this meeting. But when we leave here, we'll be going over to the groundbreaking, and I hope everybody's, it's a nice day for it. We'll be right outside one of the sally ports on front.
Okay, any more questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, capital improvement.
See you there.
Yep.
So this is an update of the working capital plan that we've seen a couple of times. And the biggest change to it is that the project schedule has been updated to include all of the known projects from all of the departments and all of the funds, again, aside from solid waste. And it also includes a summary and a 5-year capital plan and equipment plan for each of the major funds. So the highway department has a summary, solid waste has a summary, parks has a summary. Those are the important things to look at. It's good to note that the facility assessment that ICS did for us in 2021 showed that our buildings were generally in good condition, and that we didn't have any, we were not, I know you have all talked to commissioners who know that their county facilities are, millions of dollars behind in just general upkeep and deferred maintenance, and we are not in that situation. There are a couple of items that I would point out. We're talking here in the courthouse about the employee elevator, and I know we've had that conversation before. We have the outstanding item related to the judicial building and the ideas there. What are we gonna do? Are we just gonna plan to refresh and do deferred maintenance and maintain that space in place, or are we going to do something else with that? And we've pushed back doing the study on that space because we're at a critical point, and that we need that architect to focus their time and energy on the existing project to keep things rolling rather than take on another project. But we're gonna get to that, I think probably later this month or early in June. Some public works, you can see that we have some money identified for repaving the parking areas, for dealing with some of the roofs and some of the interior or some of the structural elements and some of the buildings at the shops. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars, which is a good thing. When I have this, remember this $18 million or this $1.5 million, those are just placeholders to say, if we're planning on doing something, we know it's gonna cost money relative to the court area. And then down here again, when we're looking at transit, this is a number, an estimated number. This is completely dependent on grant funding. So that's not gonna happen until we have that. Some of the expenses in remodeling the old transit shop for highway use, again, is dependent on transit having another place to go. And then pretty much everything in Deep Lake Park is grant dependent. So this next $2.5 million, that's out there as a placeholder. I could probably already kick that out because further down the road, because I would really hope that we would wrap up the expenditure of the current grant in this year or early into spring next year. We're supposed to expend it by June 30th next year. But that's dependent on that. So an important line here is the capital improvement fund balance, the additional funding that we see coming in. So again, we're showing the capital, setting aside funds for capital projects in 26, 27, and 28. We haven't had conversations about extending that beyond that, but that's how far we've kicked that out to this point. And then we take the projects that we're planning to do in each of those years and draw them down to proposed projects total, not solid waste, and an ending fund balance which just goes up to the top of the next year. So you can see that we're, that amount of money is helping us keep up with these deferred maintenance projects without having to go to any other, adding levy for those projects when they come up. Economic development, we've got numbers in here, and a lot of them are placeholders, so when we're talking about, industrial parcel sales, we're showing that as revenue in 26 and 27. We're talking about industrial development and spending some significant money, but again, we're in the planning phase with that, and we'll have an update for that, for you, and an RFQ to send out to engage somebody to help us with the pre-planning, the master planning, the engagement with the Fardin Township and the local officials will be next week. And then at some point, we're gonna determine that we wanna allocate money to build some of that infrastructure. And at another point, we might have somebody that says we wanna buy something, and then we would expedite the process of going ahead and working with that infrastructure because we know we've got something sold. So that's kind of always hanging out there. And again, this is completely funded by the amount of money, well, I did put out here in 29 and 30 on this one, but we don't have any projects out there, so this is all being completely funded by the money that we've already allocated.
Have you heard any more, Jeff, on the potential for refinance on Heritage?
Yeah, we addressed it very briefly at the last meeting, and maybe just in kind of a comment that only myself and Angie understood. The window for refinancing, the application window is not open right now. That'll be open later this year. And I believe that Angie and Chad are gonna help us to apply for there were funds set aside to refinance public debt for nursing homes at a lower interest rate. So we're gonna make the application that we could refinance some of the debt that we have against the nursing home at a lower interest rate. I think September is the timeline for that. And that'd be good, because right now, when that debt was taken out 10 years ago, it was back-end loaded, meaning that we paid smaller debt payments on the front half, and they got increasingly larger, and now they're as large as they're gonna be. And actually, I have that information in here. So these debt service schedules have been updated to include the 2024 jail bonds and the 2025 general CIP bonds. So this top three debt schedules are what the county has. You can see the one falling out from the 2010 or 2012 issue. You can see the interest and principal associated with each one. You can see that we're gonna be just a little bit up. But the second one here is the nursing home one. And if you look at 2025, we have, the total nursing home is over $1 million in principal and interest in 2025 through 2027, and then this first one drops off and we get down to this. But if you look at the large debt service, you can see that we're paying $300,000 a year, $350,000 a year in interest. This is the one that we'd be looking at applying for refinancing. And if we could reduce that $300,000 by 75%, it would be really helpful. As a matter of fact, if we had an opportunity to just refinance this whole amount of debt at a lower rate, we could probably drop this number by about $350 per year for the balance of the term. And that
So
would go a
money's
long way.
already been allocated, we don't have, because they were talking about, the Fed's cutting rates in May, when I was at the Prime West, they were talking about that. But this money's already set aside.
The program was funded in 23 and 24,
Okay.
and it has not been expended, so we expect that there will still be money in that pot for us to apply for this year.
Okay.
And the amount of money that we have to refinance is not, it was about a $10 million general debt, and these other two were much smaller. There's enough money to fund that if we are successful with an application. 'cause I wanna grab the column and add it up and see the sum, but this isn't a spreadsheet, so I can't do that. But if you look at 300,000 times about 10, it's about $3 million worth of interest that we'd be looking at, eliminating at least 2/3 of it. So yeah, that's still on the docket. It's just, that's a fall application deadline.
I don't think we'd wanna extend the terms out any further, though.
No, we would probably
Try
not want
stay
to.
within the-
But
so it's down by 40.
yeah, in any event, if you have debt at a lower interest rate, it serves today's cash flow and it serves the value of the asset into the future. Yeah, if we could just knock this down by $300,000 a year, it would significantly improve the cash flow at the nursing home. So they're budgeting to make these payments on a monthly basis, and if those payments were reduced by 25%, it would really help cash flow. As a matter of fact, it would probably offset the rate reductions that they're working with in '25. And then we've just got more information here on the capital projects by year. This is just kind of a listing as opposed to looking at that spreadsheet we looked at earlier that placed those projects. They're not all on here yet. There's kind of a work in progress. This will be completed before we bring it to the first meeting in June for the public hearing and for your approval. So this is a draft in process. But after the public hearing in June, then you'll be voting to approve this capital plan and 5-year project. So if you have questions about it, we still have time to talk about it. And again, we reviewed this, how our facilities went from $60 million to $100 million worth of facilities just based on the assessment from MCIT in the past year, which accounts for a good portion of that. This deferred maintenance by building, I will have a longer list to add in here. We got a note here, add reports for other buildings. We've seen the Deep Lake project phases. These haven't changed since that was approved. These project summaries, and I'm really pleased with how they turned out. Is a general background of the operation for these departments, and then a summary of the building capital improvement plan for 5 years and the equipment for 5 years. These are gonna be really helpful in discussing and planning for long-range budgeting. And then each one is followed by a detail list of capital and then facilities and major equipment schedules. And then we've got one for solid waste. Josh did a really good job with his, and I used his as an example to ask everybody else to do theirs. Solid waste has some major needs coming up. They don't show on the general one because it is, they're a separate fund and they have to self-fund all of their projects, so we're gonna have to take a hard look at this. The other tool we're gonna look at is the financial management plan that we had done. We will revise those assumptions in there and take a look at that so that we can really look at, well, and there are assumptions that we're gonna have to change relative to our costs and to our revenue sources that'll have to be adjusted before we can use that for budgeting this year. Parks and Trails plan, I think these summaries, like I said, are really, really helpful to create talking points, or if you don't see something on here that you think should be on here, or you see something on here that we haven't discussed yet, then those are the things we should have a conversation about next week or before we approve the plan in June. Again, it's a plan. It's just like the Highway 5-year plan. I was having a conversation about this with somebody the other day. We got a 5-year plan, and we've generally allocated funds for those projects, but then we bid the projects. And if the project doesn't come in at a price that we think we can afford to pay within the scope of budget that we have, we could choose not to do it. So everything on this plan is gonna operate the same way, there will be a point in time where we would say, well, we're gonna get quotes on this, and if they meet the budgetary guidelines, you're gonna have an opportunity to approve a quote. Again, all of it a lot of decision-making in these major projects.
The only thing I've had on Parks and Rec is, in the last 2-3 months, I've gotten a lot of calls on trying to have more pickleball courts at Heartland Park.
And that's what I was gonna bring up. There's actually, somebody who successfully, fundraised to put in more courts at Walker, and so now they're starting to do that in Park Rapids. They're trying to organize that. So if they could successfully fundraise, then we would just need to find the
You'd have
spot.
to do some preliminary, see if there's even room to expand out there, you know, because the way it looks, in order to do it, it may be possible, but some things would have to shift and move a little bit.
Tom,
It may be possible to get at least
Yeah.
2 more courts out there. with a
You're
little
still
bit
on the
of-
Parks Board, correct?
Mhm.
Is that a conversation that you're having there?
Yeah, it comes up every once in a while. It's just a question of, how many to put in there and also where, same things you're talking about here.
I was wondering if, if you can't get the desired amount at Heartland, and I get that that's a wonderful spot. But then is there either city or county land within this Park Rapids that we could put multiple courts in another spot?
I would first exhaust, really looking hard at Heartland Park
Heartland,
to
yeah,
see
I would
if
agree.
you can squeeze more in there, because
Yeah,
the more you have in one area, that they say that that's beneficial, because people come to one area to play people.
yep.
If you spread out, it's a little more complicated to have people to play. But that's another option, but, yeah, there's ways they could raise money. I mean, it'd have to be something they'd discuss with Park and Rec and come up with a plan, but there's ways to do it to help fund it.
I took a walk around there a couple of weeks ago with that in mind of, where could more pickleball courts go, and there's a lot of open ground areas out there. It's just a matter of how tight do you want the park to look.
Right.
I mean,
Or you might be able to shift the parking in the road over a little closer to the ball diamonds, pick up maybe 5 to 10 feet, but then you're gonna have to bring in some fill and might have to have a retaining wall
Well, that-
on
when
the
those-
west side of the,
When those courts are full, that parking lot is overfull.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
the consideration is not just the courts, it would be needing to add that much more parking.
Maybe my question is, is there room for more parking?
And I agree, and I think that the Parks Board should have that conversation is, what are there, 6 courts out there?
Yeah.
So if you had 6 courts out there, does 8 make it better? Or do you need 12?
right,
And if you need 12, can you leave 6 there and put 6 someplace else? Obviously having 6 there and putting 1 someplace else, that one's not gonna.
Right, you need
that-
multiple.
You need
Yeah.
for
Yes.
play, for just the way that they organize that. Like softball complexes in Fargo where I grew up. There's 4 fields in 6 locations, right? And people don't mind going to one or the other locations, but can you imagine putting 24 fields up in a single location? That just wouldn't work.
One of the things that always comes up in the conversation at the Parks Board is there's a club that uses it a lot, and they kind of tend to dominate the 6 courts. But so if you had them separated, it's still out there at the Heartland Park, but you had them in separate spots, then they'd probably just be dominating one spot, leaving another spot open for the public more.
and I've seen that in, different retirement villages, they'll have multiple sets of courts in different spots,
Yeah.
and then they just break up the groups into, beginner, intermediate, and expert, go to different spots.
Yep.
Works out fine.
Well, I get the thought that pickleball is the up and coming thing right now, but then we also need to consider, okay, so a group fundraises, gets a lot of money to put in courts. Well, then we're on the hook for the maintenance over the long term, the county is, but then is there some sort of a group user fee that could be implemented so that that money for the use of those courts could go toward the maintenance of them into the future?
One way conversation thought about that could work is you could have the local pickleball group organize as a club, raise funds. And that could go into, of course, you'd have to run this all through the legal, but go into Parks and Rec into a fund specifically for improvements of the pickleball courts at Heartland Park.
Because when people come in, they ask for these things. We try to implement them, but then over the long term, we end up still having to pay for everything for someone else to be using it. And like Tom was just saying, one group tends to dominate.
Yeah.
Well, if they're gonna dominate, they should also contribute. So,
Right, so when it comes up for resurfacing,
yep.
there's some money to help.
And-
instead
And
of
new
the county paying
nets
for
and
it all.
fences and all those things, it all adds up, so. That's my major concern with it.
Jeff, was it you or Dave that said the tilt reduction is off the table?
The way.
Because that
the-
affects Parks and Rec.
The way Matt Helgard is referencing that, the Senate and the House have both said that they're not supporting a PILT change in this budget. So yes, that is important.
So, the argument obviously is the demand is really high and it doesn't seem to be going down. Seems to be growing. So if you're gonna have good use in your parks, that's something you definitely wanna be cognizant of and looking at.
And the demand is all age groups, it's not
Yeah,
just
it's
one
all
age
over
group,
demand.
so that's a positive too.
And it is hard, and I told this group that you should come with some data to the Parks Board and explain it to them, show them, but it's really hard to get on those courts. It's really difficult, even in the middle of the day, sometimes there will be some people that wanna show up and play, and it's full.
Well, you have to
Or
go
they'll show
online
up
and
and wanna
reserve.
play when the club is using it or has it reserved, and it just, there's a high demand, and it's hard to find an open court.
Well, that's where they need to have a system of, if someone shows up, you put your rack out there
Yeah.
on a line and then you just wait your turn to get in.
Yeah.
Well, I thought to play on those courts, you had to go in and register online. Do you not have to? You just take your chance?
People should use the online registration.
Yeah.
And it's pretty widely known that that's how the courts are used. And these quality of life issues are the issues where you have the most discretion. Nobody's mandating that you do that. But, Deep Lake Park, parks in general are the things that kind of people expect when they come to visit. So these are the toughest questions to answer. But I think it's a good point that if it's not on the parks capital plan, that might be a miss, because it should be being discussed, and they should be bringing a recommendation to that and try to figure out the balance of funding versus what they can afford to fund. Our Parks Department is already past the point where PILT and timber sales are gonna manage that. We're gonna end up putting general fund levy into managing the parks. We can sell off tax forfeited land, but you sell it once and then it's gone. So we can't sell land to balance that budget forever. And truthfully, when we look at the land that we have to sell, not all of it is we know now, we've got stuff that's sitting out there on over the counter and ready to go.
Or do you wanna go to a model where you can reserve the court for $40 or $50 for an hour? There's a lot of places outside of Minnesota are doing that, private ones for sure, but it is a county park. But if the demand is that high, I don't know how you
Gen-
organize it good.
Generally, I think rather than, if you go to a metro area county park, you have to buy a day pass or a week pass or an annual pass, just like going to a state park. That's how they raise revenues to fund their parks. If they have camping, you pay for camping. But you typically would have access to all the other facilities within the park when you're there, right? So that's a conversation that parks should have too, is whether whether there's a vehicle registration or attendance registration for access to the park.
And then you have to have the logistics to collect it.
And then you have to have the logistics to collect it, right, or the logistics to enforce it. So it, again, we're at the point where timber and pilt are not covering the cost of maintaining the parks, and we're using general fund revenue to do that, and that's only going to increase, even if we don't change the level of service.
And actually, you know, regarding the ability to collect, we're gonna have to solve that situation for Deep Lake Park, so that you're gonna have a model that
Yeah.
could maybe be applied across all county parks, once we establish that.
Because I see Deep Lake Park being quite an expensive project, and it's gonna have additional staff and equipment and everything that's gonna be able to be able to maintain it properly and to the standard that we would like to see. And I don't think just through camping costs it's gonna be self-sustaining. There's no way. You can't make that much off of a campsite, even in a year's time. So there's more to think about, in the bigger picture, so.
On that one for sure, you'll probably have to do like, you go to a state park, you gotta have a sticker. You might have to do that for Deep Lake Park.
That plays into
And how are we
another-
gonna staff it? You know?
another conversation we were having at HLTC, trying to look at big picture and how to grow things, and thinking about Deep Lake Park. Once you build it, how are we gonna tell people about it? You know, you're gonna have to market the park, so how much a year are you gonna have to spend in marketing? One of our conversations at HLTC was, we're hoping that lodging tax would take care of that, so the county doesn't have to do that piece too. So be thinking about that, because we're gonna have a significant, you know, $10 or $12 million investment in a county park. And you gotta market it to get people to be aware that it exists. How's that gonna happen? We have a lot of great things in the county, but we don't always tell the story that we have them.
And you'd like to think it would be part of the package of promoting Hubbard County. To bring people to the Park Rapids area, Deep Lake Park area, Itasca area, all those things.
So Tom, one of the things that I've told the people that have talked to me about pickleball courts is that I would be looking for the park board to come with a recommendation to the county board. Not that I would go to the park board saying, this is my recommendation, it needs to come from you guys, and so I've told them to contact you and Corey.
If that's a significant issue, then it should be identified in this 5-year plan.
I think it should be.
Whether
Yeah.
we know the scope of it or not, it could be, when we're talking about Heartland Park, or generally, we could just identify that as an activity somewhere on this plan. But the conversation, I think, is identifying that it should be included in this plan
Yeah.
somehow.
Cause I believe there's room out there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter
I
of,
walk
some
around,
things would have
there's
to
room. It's
be
just,
moved around a little bit.
how much of that open space do you want
Yeah.
occupied?
I do agree, though, parking will be an issue.
And did we get didn't we do a trade with the state, and there was supposed to be some part by Heartland Park that got added onto it?
That's mainly where we used to have that trail, that didn't really add.
It's not functional space.
Okay.
It is just to make the space contiguous.
Okay.
I don't know that the space is any bigger than the size of this building.
That open space I was talking about was close to that basketball court, and
I don't know what it would be usable for. I drove by that the other day, and it's almost like just a roadbed, obviously, and that's it, and then the topography tapers down pretty quickly, so, yeah, could you fit a few things in there? Yeah, but I don't know what would go best there.
Is it close enough for overflow parking, or is it too far away?
I don't know, cause it's pretty narrow.
I don't think we could even put parking there, because isn't that parcel that bit right along the river, between
Yeah.
the river and the driveway?
Oh, sure.
So it is just to make it whole and to make sure that nobody else owns it and does something goofy with it. It's not that it's not functional space.
If anything, just a
And
pavilion
another-
or something.
There's another space that, the Parks Board should probably monitor how much it gets used, but that baseball court, actually very seldom gets used. It's
Well,
it's-
I did ask I asked Chip was one of the guys that talked to me, and I asked him how often that gets used, and he says more than you think.
well,
But my question would be, does it have to be regulation size?
yeah, they just
could-
need to
could it
monitor the
be-
use of that thing a bit.
Yeah, could it be a 3/4 size
Yeah.
ball diamond?
Is the school using it at all for, okay, so it's, yeah.
I think people will go out and practice out there and stuff, but I'm not sure it would have to be, full size then. The infield you would be, but, where you put the fence for the outfield could change some, I would think.
So Dave, you brought up a good point. I'm just curious, how are you advertising the dog park?
Well, we didn't get talking about that yet. It'll be probably open this year without the fence. I don't know yet, as far as advertising.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even people sometimes just stopping for the day would be interested in using it.
Well, and what prevents the expansion of it more than anything right now is the disc golf. If you could figure out how to realign a hole or two of the disc golf in a different, reroute it in a different area, then you would have quite a bit of room. But I don't know you'd have to go out and look at it all and know where it's all at, or figure out whether that can be done or not.
We are at close to a point in time where we should think about our travel time to get over to the
Yep.
groundbreaking.
All right.
I appreciate the work you've done on this, Jeff, because having a CIP plan is big.
Yeah, it is.
And Blake will be working on integrating elements of this and the financial management plan into the budget book that will be brought forward for you and the public to be able to see as we present the budget this year.
Okay. Well, with that, we will go into adjournment and go to the groundbreaking.